Hello and welcome to the official Sea of Thieves podcast. I'm John McMurtry, head of video production here at Rare, and today I am joined by a lovely cast of characters. We have
Mike Chapman, creative director on Sea of Thieves.
Shelley Preston, associate design director on Sea of Thieves.
Christina McFairhome, head of community and communications.
My name's Drew, production director on Sea of Thieves.
My name's Drew. I love it. So we do actually have quite a bit to talk about. We've got some exciting results from the last season big listen. We've got some stuff we want to expand on news that Drew recently talked about in the dev update. So I think we can just jump straight into it. So I think one of the first things I wanted to chat about is something you actually mentioned, not in the last dev update, Drew, but the one before that. That was that we are going to be resetting Doubloons, and we're doing that for a very specific reason, which is we're bringing in something called the Bilge Rats Weekender. Do you want to expand on that to give us a brief overview of what we've announced so far?
So yeah, we talked about it as part of the previous dev update that we're going to be reworking the entire Doubloon economy. That starts with a big reset. Mm-hmm. We knew that we needed to reset this economy that's kind of got out of control over time. And when we look ahead to, we're going to talk a little bit about the Bilge Rats Weekender, but when we look to the head of how we're going to operate doubloons in the future, we could do a decent job of like reducing the amount of doubloons that players can earn from various sources in the game. We could deliver a range of cosmetics that players can earn from their doubloons. But we've got this legacy challenge where players over the many years have been earning so many doubloons that I think we got to a point where we couldn't maths this problem away. We've got to a point where we couldn't balance the price of new cosmetics and the scarcity of how you're going to earn doubloons in the world without kind of pulling the lever and doing a big reset. So we shared that as part of the previous dev update. And I think that was tough news for players. We're taking things away. And even though we've got good justification for why, I think that was a rocky piece of news.
No, it was. And I think what happens is certainly with our players' wallet balances, they see that as a number goes up and it's a representation of their achievements on the Sea of Thieves. And they've attached there's a real emotional connection to that. And I think that we are going to recognise that. We obviously have the doubloon themed commemorative items that will be, that we're doing a lot of diligence on making sure they're balanced and priced correctly. So it really it does become special for those who have earned lots and lots of doubloons over the last few years. But it landed. It was tough. It was tough news to land. We had a lot of players who were upset, and I think we've got some work to do to kind of convince them that we're doing the right thing. And hopefully over the next few months, we'll kind of show them exactly what our plans were, and they'll feel really good about that.
So what is the change that's happening to the way that players will earn doubloons? Because it sounds like we're talking about not just that we're going to be resetting, but we're trying to balance how they earn them in the first place.
Yeah, it's kind of going back to the way that doubloons were originally envisaged. I think firstly, currencies and economies in live and evolving games are just a challenge. I think what you said, Christina, that total represents the total time invested in the game. All that, it's not just a number, it's actually all the memories, all the sessions that you've had. So taking that away is not something that it's not a decision we've taken lightly. You've seen us take some other tactics with the gold economy in the past, like stopgap solutions, and by building something like the Dark Adventurers set for the gold economy. I think for doubloons, that didn't feel like the right approach. And I think going back to year one, we added doubloons specifically as our event currency. That was the idea of come play the game, experience this moment together as a community, earn this currency at the same time, and then everybody's striving for the same things at the same time. So in a game like ours, which is largely about cosmetics, you get that added value of the storytelling of it. Oh, you've got that thing, and I understand the value of it because I understand what it translates into in terms of play. So when we thought about the Bilge Rats Weekender, we want to have that community focus and that concurrency of attention on the activities and what the value of doubloons mean. To achieve that, you've kind of got to take that. It's a challenging thing to go do, is to reset those doubloon wallets. I think we were in control of doubloons and what they meant to players in that first year. I think we experimented with stopgap solutions like bringing back the season cosmetics, which we wanted to do anyway, but we docked it to doubloon purchases to take doubloons out of the economy. We wanted to invigorate Reaper's chests in the sandbox by paying out doubloons on them. And then we kind of did nothing for several years and it kind of got a little bit out of control. Like, we see this as a way to build a healthy doubloon economy for the future, which means we've got to take this quite drastic action, but it's in service of creating real player interest over the things that are going to be in the Weekender.
Now, you did actually touch on this briefly, Christina. You mentioned there's going to be commemorative items for people to spend their doubloons on before we do reset them. Shelley, have you got details on what those items are going to be?
I do.
You do? Great. I'm really glad.
There's a set of really cool doubloon-themed items, so players can get their hands on everything from a title, a belt, an eye patch, up to a really cool cutlass and a sail. And they obviously are in kind of doubloon value, depending on like the bigger the item, the more that's going to cost you, so that you can showcase like that wallet that you had. Obviously, for the upper echelon of players, they might be able to grab everything. Yeah. But as well, even though there's a limited time that you can grab those items, buy them from the shop, if you don't manage to log in, we're going to take a look at players' wallets after that window closes and award them as if they had bought those items. So we're going to spend it in kind of the biggest wallet order first. So the biggest item that you could afford, you'll get automatically granted until kind of your wallet's dripped out. And then for anything left over as well, we're going to be converting those doubloons into gold for people. So even if you don't manage to log in or take part in this, you'll still get some commemorative items. But if you really care about which ones you want to go after, then log in and make your purchases.
And so just to talk about Bilge Rats Weekenders for a second, you don't need to go into too much detail, but like how are we sort of pitching what a Bilge Rats Weekender is for the average Sea of Thieves player?
It is a in-world pirate festival. It's a celebration of the pirate life. So the idea is going back to when we were talking about doubloons earlier, about creating this moment where everybody's doing the same things. Mm-hmm. The idea is there'll be activities to go complete for the winner in the world. That's a little bit more pitched towards everybody's kind of level. And then there's deeper activities with the smugglers, and certain clients will also be making an appearance. So rewarding kind of longer term play and deeper investment in the Weekender to get some of the most desirable items. So there's two aspects to it really. There's the Lorina aspect, and then there's the kind of smuggler aspect. But more effort required from players there, but it gates the best items. And we'll go into more detail on all of this and the thought process on the Community Direct. So looking forward to diving into detail on that.
Cool. We'll move on then. So while we record this podcast, we're in the midst of season 18. Act 3 hasn't released yet. So I think this is a good time to sort of reflect back on those first two acts. So Drew, I'll go to you first. Obviously, we had some challenges with season 18. Do you want to kind of just talk briefly on that?
Yeah, that was the back end of last year, which feels like an age ago. But yeah, season 1 of season 18 was the launch of our Eternal Guard. And as we approached the end of the year, we were scheduled to launch Act 1 in November. And I think building on some of the challenges we shared in the last podcast around season 17, just being a challenge to work on regular monthly updates and for those to deliver at quality that we should be proud of. Hitting that at a predictable delivery cadence of every single month has been tough. It's been really challenging to find that balance between, hey, we've got a date that we're shooting for, and we've got a quality bar and aspiration that we're shooting for, and we've got to factor in player feedback and our internal feedback on the experience itself. I think you saw that through season 17. We were struggling to almost establish that rhythm. And I think all of those challenges during season 17 kind of bubbled over and got to a point where it directly impacted season 18's first act. So yeah, we launched season 18 act 1 in December. So we had to take a month's delay as part of it. But that enabled us to have extra time with insiders so that we can fold their feedback in and bring Eternal Guard up to a quality bar that we should have been striving for. But we feel a bit rubbish. It was a month later than we intended.
It is challenging. You think about the Eternal Guard. As you say, we were happy with the quality that we reached in the end. But think about what that content represents. It's a new AI. We're obviously trying to push a move set that challenges people in a different way. You bring in the music, you bring in the visual effects, you bring in the integration into the world building, like all of the kind of spectacle of it. And that's just one feature because the team is split on the month after and then the month after. That's where the challenges kind of arise. And, We are just shipping the Eternal Guard at the end of the day. There's only so many ways that can integrate into the sandbox, but I think that's where we really feel the pinch when we're working on multiple things at the same time for that monthly delivery. The move to that strategy came from a good place. It came from giving players regular things to look forward to. But I think when you combine that with the bar that we want to hit and creating meaningful experiences that change the sandbox, all of those things kind of compounded. It is really challenging. It's been quite hard on the team to hit that quality bar.
And there's kind of a cascading effect, isn't there? Because as soon as we're then, needing to spend more time on Act 1 or on Eternal Guard or whatever it may be, then that's by design, that's going to then affect the next act and the next act beyond, because it's the same team kind of delivering each month of that season. So there's very little kind of wiggle room there for the team. So yeah, it's definitely been, we're striving to create the best quality that we can for players, but it's been a challenging one.
And you talk about that sort of cascading effect there, Shelley. Is that, obviously we just announced that we're delaying Act 3's release by a couple of weeks as well. Is that the reason there, Drew?
Yep. That is ultimately the reason. We have the same season team that is working on Act 1 of Eternal Guard, then worked on the Molten Sands Fortress in Act 2, and is working on the Ashen Garrisons. So yeah, it is almost it's a creeping death. It's that cascading effect of if we're late with one, we try our best. We're in there trying to go, how can we make this feature set fit? Yeah. Is there additional resource that we can apply to it? And we're so limited with, hey, time is just going to tick through. But yeah, unfortunately, Act 3 was affected by Act 1's delay. But I think we've had to take that as a team and go, we need to think long and hard about what content we're delivering, how we're delivering it in future seasons. Because I think we've proven that this model that we established in season 17 and we followed up with season 18, that new season strategy isn't hitting the mark. And we aren't able to deliver this stuff at a quality bar that we're proud of on the dates that we need to. So we kind of need to take a step back.
Yeah. And I think we'll touch on a bit of what you're just mentioning there when we chat about season 19 a little bit later on. But before we get to that, I think it's worth maybe looking at the season 17 Big Listen results. If you want to take us through those, Christina.
Let's do it. So obviously when we did our community direct, the kind of second half of last year, we obviously had our ongoing commitment to our players to kind of socialise all the results of our surveys and make sure, we are listening and that we're moving things in the right direction. So the season 17 results are in. I'm going to run through them and I've got some kind of questions that I'll ask you fine folks. But I think the key thing is a lot of this, I don't think came as necessarily as a surprise to us. And we had some signals beforehand, but this really does help us kind of crystallise and without sounding really boring, it's very easy to plot on a chart, right? Player experience and player sentiment goes up or goes down, and we have that kind of discrete figure that we can track and follow, which is really important to us when we want to kind of lift game sentiment, game health, data points all up. So
I think it's worth saying as well, it's important that the big listen is a much kind of wider survey. Not everybody likes to comment online or to talk online or to have an online presence, and it means we can capture more feedback from different types of players as well. So we're getting a broad view.
There's totally that, and we kind of behind the scenes we have kind of segmented the players into their play styles, and you're absolutely right. Our community is amazing, but sometimes there is pressure to view things a certain way. If you want to say something that's kind of going against the grain of kind of group sentiment, you're more reticent to go into that. So this really does give us a sanitized, kind of unbiased look at kind of a broad section of our community and how they're feeling. So the first stat, so the overall player rating for season 17 was 5.6 out of 10 versus season 16, 6.1. So that's effectively a 5% dip in kind of enjoyment of the season. I think given how we announced the theme of season 17, it was at the Xbox Summer Showcase. I think it's fair to say, I think reception was a little lukewarm, I think, at that moment. And I don't think we ever really kind of changed people's perceptions of that. So I guess, is that kind of what everyone expected to see? I'll go to you, Mike.
Yeah, I think so. I think part of the opportunity with the showcase is to put Sea of Thieves out there, excite the community. I think that means what you're going to put forward as a trailer asset needs to be ready a lot earlier, which means you're kind of in the awkward position of making commitments on things that then need to get scoped in the team. And there's things in that trailer Portmerrick, which was there deliberately to kind of excite people, because that's exactly where we were thinking in terms of the feature set and having this awesome siege on that location. I think the reality of actually achieving that at performance across all the various hardware that we support was incredibly challenging for the team. So season 17 was that we kind of had that lukewarm reception. And I think we look back on it and you say, well, I'm still moving things and ferrying things around the world. Like, is that really different in terms of what I can do now in Sea of Thieves? I could do before, in Sea of Thieves. But then I think from the showcase to launch, things just had to fall away to meet a deadline. And I think it wasn't the strongest theme in hindsight. It's something we've always wanted to do. I think smuggling has been there, but right even before launch as a theme. But I think the way we executed on that was we weren't happy with that execution. So not a terrible surprise to see that reception.
Yeah, I think the good thing is that this, obviously touching on the Bilge Rats Weekender, this definitely gives us a foundation to go build upon and improve. Yes. I think it's fair to say. So obviously that, no spoilers. Watch the community direct at the end of March. But I think that it is a foundation fundamentally for stuff that we're looking at including and building upon in future with the Bilge Rats Weekender. So moving on from that, because I don't want to dwell, but we did have some content highlights. So Black Powder Barrels and Reaper Fortresses were the most popular features of the season. Unsurprisingly, I don't know about you, but I saw many a clip, which I did enjoy. And I think the dynamic of this was really different this time round because the NDA for Insiders had been lifted. So as soon as those Black Powder Barrels went into Insiders, we had the signals that they were going to be really fun for gameplay because people were having fun with them and kind of vocalising that much earlier on. So that was great. And that's validated in the results here. And our Reaper Fortresses are really popular as well. So they scored 4.1 and 4.2 out of 5 respectively. And then improved weapon switching was the third most enjoyed feature of the Season 17 feature set, which I think is great because I think when you think about features, you might not necessarily think improving something is going to make huge impacts, but from our ratings, it absolutely did. And it was, it really kind of hit the mark. So I know the Guardians of Fortune team did a lot of work on that, and that should be really satisfying to know that fundamentally, more people than not have said that's changed the nature of how they do combat, which is...
I still look at clips that are playing through of Season 18 and people skeeting with much smoother combat, and I think that's almost... It's hard to call out as a feature and for you to put it front and centre in a trailer, but you feel it every time you're in combat on island or in land.
It touches the whole experience, which is what when Black Powder Barrels, right? Like finding them across the sandbox. I do think on those points, both Black Powder Barrels and Reaper Fortresses were the ones we had the most fun with. They were the ones that were the most fun to design, the most fun to balance, the most fun to have design sessions on. I think at the time working on Reaper Fortresses, it was like, I wish this wasn't the last act of the season because it typically is where we put our strongest content. It just happens to fall out that way in terms of the time that you have. But yeah, no great surprises there. And I think that reflects the way we felt internally about the features.
No, I agree. And I think looking at this, the least popular were the Smugglers' Hideouts and the Smugglers' Route Run Voyages. So they scored 2.9 and 2.6 out of 5 respectively. And just kind of going back to that previous point I made about kind of that being a foundation to build on, do you see that as a signal that there is improvements to be made in that experience or kind of new ways of kind of rewarding people for going down that particular route? Without giving too much away, how is that Bilge Rats Weekender going to kind of evolve to make that slightly more interesting?
I think the context on why you're doing it and how that's a focus for players in the sandbox. I think the thing we've often heard from the community, and we asked ourselves the same question, who are you smuggling from? And the answer is you're smuggling past other players in the sandbox. That only works well when everyone's focused on the same thing. So using that as a foundation as part of the Bilge Rats Weekender, as part of a black market, does make all the sense in the world. So that should inject some new life into that way of play.
And I think it's fair to say that the just with the limited time that we had, the reward, the nature of the rewards of the voyages for the Smugglers League fell a little bit flat with players, whereas the actual structure of smuggling things on a known route past other players, we still believe there's potential in that. Just the items need to be a bit more meaningful.
Yeah. I think with items and concurrency, it really changes the nature of that engagement and that prospect. So I'm excited to see how that works out. And then again, I'm going to go through these. Game health. So game health improved from a kind of experiential perspective by 1% with regards to cheating at toxicity. So that's a super small improvement, but importantly for certainly for me, not a regression. We'll talk about this as we kind of tee up season 19, but there's some work we've got in flight at the minute regarding hourglass and cheat prevention measures that I think are really going to hopefully see that stat increase a lot more. And if you will afford me the time, I just want to touch on something that we're doing internally. So we did that first big listen survey for season 16, and we had a really big signal there that actually negative player encounters were really impacting our players' perceptions of game health far more than what we were really necessarily anticipating. From there, we went on and did an additional toxicity survey where we kind of dug really deeply into what players consider toxic, how they feel about toxic encounters, how they would rank certain things that they experience in the sandbox, and kind of understanding motivations from people who have historically been toxic as well, which is a really important thing to understand. Like, why are you doing it in the first place, rather than us putting hurdles in? Prevention's better than cause, etc. And off the back of that, we actually have formed kind of an internal, I'm going to give it a cool name, strike force. We have a cross-disciplinary strike force set up specifically to combat toxicity within the Sea of Thieves and really help move positive player encounters forward, and just look at where can we find all the 1% for it to become greater than the sum of a little change over here, a little change over here. How can we just broadly lift up the kind of positive social nature of Sea of Thieves and kind of minimize that opportunity or inclination for toxic encounters? So while there's not a lot to share on this at the minute, I wanted to just use that as a jumping off point for there's some really interesting work in flight or being proposed, and it might happen quickly, it might happen slowly, some of it, but we are really committed to making Sea of Thieves a much less toxic, I'm going to do this because toxicity means lots of different things to lots of people, but a much less toxic environment. And we really want to promote positive social play and get people feeling like they have more confidence to go have positive encounters rather than feeling kind of nervous to go into Hourglass or nervous to go into certain types of engagements, play styles, etc., because of what they think might be on the other side. So that piece of work is really important. Not a lot to talk about at the minute, but hopefully in future podcasts, lots of really interesting things to share on that.
So a couple of little wins, a couple of little regressions maybe versus the previous season. How does that sort of stack up with your expectations when you're building a season? Like that sort of hearing sort of feedback like that?
I think there's two ways to look at that. I think we've used the word foundation a lot, and I think that's just, firstly, having a plan for something, locking it in, even sometimes building a trailer around it, and then the plan shifting based on not being able to get it all done in time, but still prioritizing. We still want content to release for players at this time. That's never going to go away as a challenge, especially when you're prioritizing variety to a certain extent. You don't just want to keep building the same things. You want to build things that you haven't done for a while, or where there is player feedback, but we're trying to meet it in a new and unexpected way. So I think that's always the backdrop to all of this, is you're never going to get everything that you want. So the other way of looking at it is that when things don't land altogether, that's okay, because we still have our plans. We've still got a vision for where we want to grow them and where we can take them. So we can still build on them over time. And that's the beauty of having a game like Sea of Thieves. It's always available. It can always evolve and change over the years. There's many examples over previous years where we've launched something, now we can say, a little bit half-baked, and then we've gone back and we've done the idea justice. So you kind of chalk it up that way. I think it is unfortunate that for season 17 specifically, we had gone out there at the showcase and we were really excited at the time, and just so much fell away. But all we can do is, reflect on that and be careful about the commitments that we make in the future, but also where we're prioritizing the newness.
Yes.
Because I think there's a lot of us being pulled from pillar to post on team focused on game health, teams focused on toxicity, teams focused on new content. And I think sometimes we just need to be really focused on where we're spending our chips and where we're trying to have real impact with our community and our player base. And I think our Achilles heel as a team, and I'll say this, is we often try and do too much. And even in limited time, we'll always go, we've pulled it off before, we'll pull it off again, we'll get it all in there and we'll really surprise players. I think the community can feel it when the team is having fun. I think the community can feel it when the team have achieved all of their goals. And like, it doesn't always go smoothly, and that's just the reality of game dev. But no great surprises in any of that feedback. But I think it's also not something we take lightly. Like, we take the community feedback seriously, and I mean, it can't not but factor into decisions we're going to make in the future.
Let's just expand on something you said there, Mike. So, Drew, in the last dev update, you announced some changes to what we had previously announced to Insiders about the content of Season 19.
Yep.
So do you want to just give a brief overview for those that missed that dev update of what we had previously announced and what we announced in that dev update?
Let me talk about what we are doing first.
Yes.
So Season 19's first update is going to be focused around, well, it's going to be two parts. We've got our anniversary celebration. It's our 8th year anniversary in March later this year.
Many were there.
So there's a range of anniversary celebrations.
Yep.
There's a community weekend. There'll be things for players to earn as part of that. So there's an anniversary piece, but the content and the feature set that's going to expand as part of that first month is going to be Hourglass. So I've been sharing in dev updates for what feels like six months by now of like, hey, we're making improvements to a platform of play that we haven't touched really since Season 8. So the team have been working across various different areas, and we'll probably end up touching on the specifics, but really looking at what we need to do to elevate Hourglass as a platform. And I think we initially looked at that as just set of improvements to be delivered when they're finished.
Yeah.
But we looked at it as an opportunity and went, actually, these things all connect together to make a really holistic update to Hourglass, and made the decision to bring those together all at once at the start of Act 1 for season 19. So that's the focus for the first month of Season 19. The second one is landing our Bilge Rats Weekender and the return of the black market. So that is going to arrive in the second month. And then the third month is going to be an introduction of Last Ship Standing and a competitive 6-sloop experience in the Sea of the Damned, which I think we're all very excited for. And at this point, probably has already gone into Insiders for early testing.
There's going to be some fights, and there's going to be a festival.
So one of the things that you mentioned in that last dev update, Drew, was reassessing how we work on these seasons, because obviously that wasn't the original intent for Season 19. The original plan for Season 19 had a little bit more in it. So not want to dwell on the things we've cut, but what have we cut from what we originally announced, and why have we had to cut them?
It's a challenge because, almost to the same point as you made with the showcase announcement of the smugglers, and then we're almost committed then to the start of Season 17. The regular delivery of seasons almost means that we have to go, cool, season 19, our plan is that we're going to do these set of features. And then we announce it to insiders with a no NDA transparent policy that information goes out. And then we learn along the way that changes need to be made. Unfortunately, we've had to remove the Orb of Souls, which was that item that collected souls based on what players did within the game. There was some voyages to obtain the Orb of Souls as well, and the update to the Kraken encounter. Those are three things that we announced as part of Season 19's kind of early look for insiders. But unfortunately, as we moved through development on Season 18, and clearly we've talked about the fact that the first act suffered a delay, the third act has now also taken a 2-week hit. We kind of looked at Season 19 and said, it's quite clear that we're running out of road. We're gonna no doubt start in the first month of Season 19 and feel like we're not ready. It's either going to be a compromise from a quality perspective, or we're just going to be physically unable to ship these things. So we took a step back from the feature set that we really wanted. Like, we all feel really passionate about the approach for Season 19 that we had, and went, we need to pressure release on the team, slow ourselves down a little bit, and create some breathing room to be able to go and deliver updates across the 3 months of the season that we think are really going to excite players. And as part of that, unfortunately, we had to say, right, there's some features that are going to have to fall off as a result of it.
But I think even though we've lost those features, and it is obviously it's always a shame when we get invested internally. The reason why we plan these features is because we believe they're going to be great for players. But at the same time, I think where we've landed with season 19, I think it's still a really exciting season for players. As you said, it's fights and parties, but the refocus on Hourglass for the players who enjoy Hourglass, we really believe strongly in everything that we're doing in Act 1 that will elevate Hourglass to a better experience than it's ever been before. Super fast, smooth flow, easy to get into matches, play again, kind of in that loop, getting restocked, getting your emissary auto-raised, faster matches because you've got that zone kind of shrinking in. And then in Act 2, you've got that completely different vibe with the party and the Bilge Rats Weekender and everybody to come in to celebrate that. And then Last Ship Standing, which our internal playtests on that, even early ones, which I think insiders will have seen, very early playtests, but just super exciting. Just emerging out of the water and seeing 5 other sloops. It's really exciting.
Yeah.
I think the best thing about this is this isn't just good for season 19.
Yeah.
That's the best thing, is that Hourglass changes are gonna last and they'll be permanent, but then also you have events that are gonna be recurring events on our live service calendar.
Yes.
So it's gonna change the nature of how people play in future seasons. And I think that's really important to consider, because this is content that's
a really important point to make. Bilge Rat Weekender and Last Ship Standing, they don't just go away after the season. They're going to come back on a regular cadence as well. And the Hourglass changes, fully permanent. This is the new Hourglass.
So one of the things you mentioned in the last dev update, Drew, was sort of reassessing the type of content that we're focusing on. So, Mike, I just want to ask you, what does that mean to you when we're talking about reassessing that focus?
Yeah, well, I think about what we've talked about on this podcast, where we've been invested as a team over the last year. I mean, it's a huge range of content. We've just talked about the removal of the Kraken from the season 19 plans. We've talked about the Bilge Rat Weekender, Pirate Festival, Hourglass improvement, ongoing game health, Eternal Guard. It's a huge range of content that we add to the sandbox. And some of that is bolstering trading company progression. Some of it's bolstering stories in the sandbox. But reflecting back on where Sea of Thieves has come from. It's come from that place of the vision was players creating stories together. It's about equipping players with these tools and this motivation in a shared world and having these explosion of possibilities that happen when players come together in the sandbox. Part of also what we're building at the moment, and we talked about it on the last Community Direct, is our custom servers feature set, being able to hand the world over to our players. So I think about, the future and the content that we want to add. I think it's probably, we need to focus more on how we empower players in the sandbox to create these amazing stories. And I think it's a little bit more focused than where we are now, where we're just trying to bring life and richness to the whole game. But that's where we're hitting our challenges.
So obviously during this podcast, we've done quite a bit of reflecting, looking back and talking about some of the challenges we've had recently. But we've got exciting stuff coming up soon, actually. And we're going to be talking about it in our next Community Direct, which, Christina, you hinted at earlier, or said out loud. It's going to be March 30th is the next Community Direct. So I hope you can join us there, because we're going to talk about exciting things like custom seas and seasons beyond, stuff from season 19 like the Bilge Rat Weekender and Last Ship Standing. So lots of good stuff to get stuck into. So please join us for that. For now, I think we'll end the podcast there. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and we'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye.